What if the stranger you rescued in a storm wasn't helpless at all, but hiding a truth big enough to shatter your whole world? The storm came hard across the Wyoming plains on the 12th of October, 1790, rolling over the land like a dark wave. Willer Blackwood pulled her hat lower and pushed her weary mare through the mud that clung to the horse's hooves. Her fingers were numb inside her gloves. Her coat, thick wool and worn thin in places, could barely hold back the bitter wind. She was tired, cold, and ready to fall face first into her bed. The small settlement of Havely Ridge sat tucked between two low hills. Most folks said the town looked like it had been dropped there on accident. The livery stable stood at the edge of the street, its doors rattling in the wind as Willer rode toward it. She dismounted with stiff legs and grabbed her basket of supplies from the saddle. Flour, salt, lard, and a few things she traded chickens for. She was already thinking about Stu when she saw him. A man sat against the livery wall. Rain poured over him like he didn't even notice. His clothes were torn and stiff with days-old mud. His boots had holes big enough to see his socks. He had no coat, no hat, and only a thin bedroll tied with rope beside him. His empty canteen lay in the mud, but he wasn't slumped over or beaten down. He sat straight, back against the wall, shoulders strong, like he'd chosen to sit in the rain on purpose. It made no sense. Most drifters curled up, desperate to keep warm. He looked too proud for that. Willer slowed. She should have minded her own business. She had enough trouble of her own. But something about him made her stop walking. She stepped closer. The man still didn't move. "Are you planning to drown out here?" she said, "or just enjoying the view?" His eyes opened, golden brown, sharp, alert. Not the eyes of a broken man. "Ma'am," he said, voice low and smooth, "I'm fine, thank you." "You don't look fine. You look like you're 10 minutes from catching pneumonia." The corner of his mouth twitched like a smile was trying to escape. "I'll be careful where I die then." Willer frowned. Up close she saw he was shivering hard. His hands were clenched tight against his knees. A faint streak of dried blood showed near his ribs. "You're hurt." "Just a scratch," he said simply. "Got into a disagreement with a fellow over a job. He had a knife and stronger opinions than I did. You need a doctor. Can't pay him. I'll be all right." She believed he had seen worse. Something in his eyes told her he'd lived through things most folks wouldn't speak about. She should have walked into that livery and never looked back. Instead, her boot caught on a loose board. Her basket tipped. Flour burst into the mud, the tin of lard rolled away, and her salt pouch dropped right into a puddle. "Blast it," she muttered, dropping to her knees. The man moved fast. Far too fast for someone half frozen. He snatched the salt pouch before it sank and handed it to her with surprising care. "Thank you," he said quietly. Willer blinked. "I'm the one dropping everything." "Why are you thanking me?" "Because you stopped," he said, meeting her eyes. "Most people don't." She stared at him then, really looked. Past the mud and the shivers and the torn clothes, this wasn't a common drifter. His hands were rough but steady, his posture proud, his voice educated. A bruise on his cheek, scars on his knuckles, secrets in his eyes. She knew better than to bring strange men home, knew it deep in her bones. But she also knew what it felt like to be cold, hungry, and alone in a world that didn't care if you lived or died. "Fine," she said sharply. "Get up." He stared. "Ma'am?" I said, "Get up." She grabbed her ruined sack of flour and stuffed it back in her basket. "You're coming with me. If you freeze to death tonight, everyone will say I walked by and did nothing, and I'm not letting Havely Ridge talk like that." "I can't." "You can. And you will." She gave him a stare that made seasoned ranch hands back down. He hesitated, swallowed hard, then slowly stood. He swayed, catching himself on the wall. Without thinking, Willer stepped beside him, ducking under his arm to steady him. "What's your name?" she asked as she guided him toward the road. He was quiet for a long time, "Silas," he said finally. "Silas what?" Another pause. "Just Silas." She didn't push. She had secrets too. "All right, just Silas," she said. "I'm Willer Blackwood, and you're about to owe me for the best venison stew you'll ever taste." His soft laugh blended with the rain. "I'm sure I will." They walked the rest of the way in heavy silence. Willer's cabin sat a quarter-mile from town, small and leaning slightly to one side. The roof leaked in 2 places. The door stuck in winter. But it was hers. She got Silas inside and seated him by the fire before she even took off her hat. Warm light filled the room. Rain beat against the window. Silas looked exhausted, bone-tired, but his eyes followed her every move with a strange, quiet intensity. "Take off your shirt," she said. His eyes shot wide. "Your shirt," she repeated. "You're bleeding. I need to see the wound." He removed it slowly. When she turned back, her breath caught. He was lean from hunger, ribs showing, but strong. Scars laddered his chest, old ones, carrying stories she didn't want to imagine, and the gash along his ribs was angry and red. "That's not a scratch," Willer muttered. "I've had worse." "You keep saying that." She pulled a clean cloth from the shelf. "Hold still." He did, barely. When she pressed the cloth to his skin, he hissed but didn't pull away. She cleaned the wound as gently as she could, feeling the heat of him under her fingers, feeling something dangerous curling low in her stomach. When she finished wrapping his ribs, she stood. "I'll get you dry clothes." She didn't miss the way his eyes softened when she said it, but she ignored it. She had no idea that one small act of kindness was about to change everything she thought she knew about her life, and about him. Morning came quietly, creeping into Willer's cabin like it was afraid to disturb anything inside. Willer woke to the smell of coffee drifting up to her sleeping loft. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. Then she heard someone moving below. Silas. She sat up fast, nearly hitting her head on the low beams, and hurried down the ladder in her nightdress. What she saw made her stop. Silas stood at her stove, sleeves rolled to his elbows, steam rising from the coffee pot. The fire crackled cheerfully. The cold morning air at the windows didn't stand a chance against the warmth inside. He looked up when he heard her. "Good morning," he said, almost shy. "I hope you don't mind." "I thought you might want coffee." Willer stared. "Did you fix my cabinet?" Silas glanced at the cabinet door, the one that had hung crooked for 6 months. It now sat perfectly straight. "It was broken," he said. "Didn't seem right leaving it that way." "And my tools?" Willer pointed at the wall. Her tools hung neatly, arranged by size and purpose. They hadn't looked that organized since her brother died. "They were scattered," Silas admitted. "I like them scattered," she snapped, though she didn't. "I can find things that way." Silas handed her a cup of coffee, warm and perfect. "If you want, I can put them back exactly how they were." She took a sip. It was smooth and rich, better than anything she'd ever brewed. "How did you make it this good?" she demanded. "I've made a lot of coffee," Silas said simply, leaning against the counter with careful distance. "It's one of the few things I'm still good at." He looked better after a night of real rest, still pale, still tired, but his eyes were clearer, softer. "Eat," Willer ordered, handing him bread and a bit of leftover stew. "Then you can move on." He hesitated. "Move on? You can't stay here forever." He nodded slowly. "Of course." But something flickered in his eyes. Something that twisted inside her in ways she didn't understand. After breakfast, Willer grabbed her coat and headed outside. "The fence needs fixing," she said. 3 posts are rotted clean through. You want to be useful. Start there." Silas blinked at her. "You want me to stay?" Quote, "I want the fence fixed," she said quickly. "That's all." A slow smile spread across his face, warm and boyish in a way she didn't expect. "I can fix a fence," he said softly. By noon, Willer was regretting everything. Silas didn't just fix the fence. He attacked it like a man trying to rebuild his entire life with bare hands. He worked steady and skillful, pulling out rotted posts, digging new holes, setting fresh wood like he'd done it 1,000 times. No drifter worked that well. No homeless man moved with that kind of purpose. "Who are you really?" Willer muttered as she watched from the barn, irritation mixing with curiosity and something like admiration. When she brought him water, he straightened, sweat darkening the shirt across his shoulders. Even in the cool air, he worked like he had something to prove. "Your fence is worse than you told me," he said, wiping his forehead. "The whole western line is going to need replacing." "I know," she said. "Hard work for one person." He studied her a moment. "You run this place alone?" "My brother used to help," she said stiffly. "How long has he been gone?" 3 years. Silas didn't offer empty words. He just nodded once, a quiet kind of respect passing through his eyes. That night they ate dinner together, fried chicken he cooked and potatoes she boiled. She didn't want to admit it, but the man could cook. "Where did you learn to make chicken like this?" she asked. Silas hesitated. "My mother taught me." "Before what?" she pressed. He looked down at his plate. "Before everything changed. Before I lost almost everything I had." "Lost?" Willer frowned. "Lost what?" He didn't answer right away. He set his fork down, hands folding slowly. "I inherited land once," he said quietly. "Money. Cattle. More than I knew what to do with. I trusted the wrong men and made bad decisions. I lost most of it. Then I walked away from what was left." Quote. Willer stared at him. "You're talking like a man who had something worth losing." "I did once." His eyes lifted to hers. "I'm not that man anymore." Silence settled over the room, soft and heavy. Later, when she was heading to the loft, she paused on the ladder. "You can stay another night," she said without looking at him. "Your wound's not healed yet. No point risking infection." He looked up from where he sat by the fire. "Thank you," he said, voice low. "Don't thank me. Just don't mess up anything else in my cabin." "Yes, ma'am." Quote. Her heart did something strange when he said that. She ignored it. For 3 days, he stayed. For 3 days, he fixed things. Coffee every morning, dinner every night. Quiet talk by the fire. A rhythm that felt dangerously close to belonging. The town noticed. They whispered. And on the 6th day, Willer marched home with flour under her arm and anger in her chest. "Silas," she said the moment she walked in the door. "The town thinks something improper is happening." He rose from the table. "Do you want me to leave?" "I want to know why you're still here." His face softened. "Because your cabin feels more like home than any place I've been in years." Her breath caught. "And because," he added, voice dropping, "being near you makes me want to be the man I should have been instead of the man I became." The air changed. Thick, warm, fragile. "You don't know anything about me," she whispered. "I know enough," he said softly. "I know you're strong, kind, stubborn. I know I look forward to your voice every morning. I know." She cut him off by standing suddenly. "I need to check the chickens." "Willer, I'll be back." She walked out into the cold night air, heart shaking inside her chest. She wasn't sure if she was more afraid of pushing him away or letting him stay, because she already knew the truth she didn't dare say aloud. She was falling for the stranger she'd pulled out of the storm, and he wasn't who he claimed to be, not even close. Willer hardly slept that night. Every time she drifted off, she dreamed of Silas, his hands steady on her fence posts, his laugh warming her cabin, his eyes following her like he was afraid she'd vanish. When dawn came, she wasn't sure if she wanted him gone or wanted him to stay forever, but the answer found her before she could find it herself. By mid-morning, Willer rode into Havley Ridge for supplies. The air was sharp, the sky bright, and people stared at her everywhere she went. She ignored it. She dealt with small-town gossip before. Inside the dry goods store, Mrs. Carroll measured flour with tight lips. "Heard you've got company at your cabin," the older woman said. Willer didn't flinch. "He's helping with repairs," Mrs. Carroll sniffed. "That what they call it now?" Willer paid and walked out without replying. She was angry. Angry at the town for talking. Angry at herself for caring. Angry at Silas for what? For getting close? For making her want something she wasn't supposed to want? She was so lost in thought, she didn't notice Lel Havely approaching until his horse stopped directly in front of her. "Miss Blackwood," he said, tipping his hat. His face was serious. "We need to talk." Willer frowned. "About what?" "That man living with you. The one you call Silas." Willer stiffened. "What about him?" Mr. Havely reached into his coat and pulled out a folded newspaper. He handed it to her. Willer unfolded it, eyes scanning the headline. "Cattle Fortune Heir Disappears After Series of Disastrous Decisions." The sketch beneath the headline showed a clean-shaven, well-dressed younger man, Silas, or rather, Silas Lockridge, heir to one of the wealthiest cattle families in the territory. Willer felt the world tilt. "He told me he lost everything," she whispered. "He lost a great deal," Havely said gently. "But not all. The Lockridge lands, the trust, the investments, they're still there. That man is no drifter. He is still one of the richest men in Wyoming, if he wants to be." Willer's hands shook as she held the newspaper. "He lied," she breathed. "He lied to me for days." She didn't wait for Havely to say more. She turned her horse hard and rode for home, fury boiling under her skin. Silas was in the barn repairing the door when she stormed inside. He looked up, smiling at first, until he saw her face. "Willer? What?" She threw the newspaper at him. It hit his chest and fell to the dirt, his face drained of color. "Willer?" "Your name," she choked out, "is Silas Lockridge." He swallowed. "Yes." "You lied to me." "I didn't." "You let me believe you had nothing. You let me." Her voice cracked with hurt she didn't want him to hear. "You let me build something with you. And the whole time you were a rich man playing poor." "I wasn't playing anything," Silas said quietly. "I walked away from the fortune. I walked away from that life." "You should have told me." "I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid you'd look at me like everyone else has. Afraid you'd think I was useless. Afraid you'd throw me out before you knew me." Her throat tightened painfully. "You should have trusted me." He stepped toward her. I know I should have. Willer, I've made so many mistakes that I didn't know how to tell you the truth without losing you. You have lost me." The words hit him harder than any blow. Silas stood trembling, his hands open at his sides like he didn't know how to hold himself together. "Willer," his voice broke, raw and low, "please don't ask me to leave." "I have to," she whispered. "If you stay, I'll never know what part of you is real." Silas bowed his head, as if the weight of his choices finally crushed him. Then he turned and walked out of her barn, out of her yard, and down the long road until he disappeared from sight. Willer didn't cry until her knees gave out. For 2 days, she worked until her hands bled. Anything to stop thinking of him. Anything to silence the memory of his voice saying her name like it meant something. On the 3rd day, she went into town for answers. She read every newspaper article about Silas Lockridge. She spoke to ranch hands who once worked for his family. What she learned was simple and heartbreaking. He had been young. He had been foolish. He had been taken advantage of. He had lost everything trying to save everyone else. But he had not been cruel. He had not been greedy. And he had not been the liar she thought he was. She felt sick with guilt. She had thrown him away without listening. She had been just as afraid as he was. She found him 2 miles outside town in an old collapsed barn, trying to fix a support beam with the wrong kind of nails. He swung the hammer, missed, cursed softly. "You're holding it wrong," she called out. Silas spun around, eyes wide, like he hadn't slept in days. "Willer, you can't fix that alone," she said, walking toward him. "It takes 2 people." Silas slowly set the hammer down. "What are you doing here?" Quote, "Looking for you." Something broke inside him at those words. He took a step forward, then stopped himself like he feared she'd disappear. She sat beside him on a fallen beam. "I read everything," she said softly, "and I talked to people who knew you." Silas braced himself. "You weren't the greedy fool the papers made you out to be," she said. "You were just a young man who tried too hard and trusted the wrong people." "I lost everything," Silas said bitterly. "Deserved to." "You didn't deserve to lose yourself." He froze. Willer reached for his hands. "I was angry, hurt, and I reacted without listening. That's on me. But, Silas, I need to know something." He looked up slowly. "When you were with me, were you running from your past or building toward something new?" Silas swallowed, voice rough. "When I was with you, I wasn't running from anything. I was running toward you." Her breath hitched. "And I still am," he whispered. Willer's eyes filled. "Silas." He took her hands gently. "You gave me a place to feel like a man again. Not an heir, not a failure. Just a man. Your man. If you want me." She laughed through tears. "I never stopped wanting you." He let out a breath like he'd been drowning and she'd offered him air. They kissed, slow, trembling, full of apology and hope. When they pulled apart, Willer rested her forehead against his. "You're coming home," she whispered. He nodded. "If you'll have me." She smiled. "Help me fix this beam and we'll talk." Together they lifted the broken wood, their hands working in rhythm, and something inside both of them settled back into place. By sunset, they rode back to the cabin. Side by side this time, and neither of them looked back. They didn't need to. They were finally heading toward the life they were meant to build.